Hello and welcome back to my humble show. I am your host for today. Well, tonight and every other night, the Articulate Thinker. Hopefully, here to bring you art articles and articulation straight from articulation stations. Be sure to like, subscribe, and enjoy the ride. Don't forget to turn on those bell notifications while you're at it. If you like it, put a ring on it. I'm not going to spend too much time right here, right now on this topic of, well, Israel and Gaza. I do have a few other things to mention. Some newsworthy, some not so much. As for the personal life, well, tomorrow is Friday. Technically, today is Friday. It is now 2 o'clock in the morning, which is one of the reasons why I don't want to spend too much time on this. I did record a show earlier in the day while I was on my lunch break. Ran out of time, so yeah. Have a few things to add. This is basically a follow-up on that show, which nobody really watched. But if you're watching this one, I greatly appreciate it. And I do hope that you like, subscribe, and enjoy the ride. But yes, tomorrow is a short work day for me. I do have to go to work bright and early in the morning, though, so I need to get some sleep. But yes, after work, have some family things to attend to. I mean, my in-laws, my wife's family is having a bit of a get-together because it is my wife's birthday on Sunday. And we are going to have a fun day that day. So the get-together is planned for tomorrow. I would like to talk at some point tomorrow, if I can find the time, about the House Speaker situation. Will Jim Jordan get it? Will he not? Well, I do have this article pulled up here in front of me. And like I said, this particular show, this particular podcast is not going to be about this. It is going to be about the aforementioned situation over in the Middle East. But yes, I will add now because I don't know if I'll have much time to add any additional thoughts tomorrow. Path forward for Jordan. Republicans on House Speaker now uncertain. This is a headline from the Washington Post. Washington Compost, of course. Scrolling down a bit here. The path forward for House Republicans. Yes, that's right. House Republicans. If you're Mike Tyson. On choosing a House Speaker remained unclear Thursday. Get my days mixed up here. After a day of lengthy and at times heated meetings. Earlier Thursday, got it right that time, Representative Jim Jordan, the embattled GOP Speaker nominee, told his conference that he would back a plan to temporarily expand the powers of Representative Patrick McHenry, the interim Speaker, and delay a third ballot for Speaker. Jordan later suggested to reporters that the plan won't move forward right now. He said he would seek a third ballot for Speaker, with a vote delayed until Friday morning at the earliest. So, presumably, at the earliest, there's going to be another vote at some point this morning, since, like I said, it is 2 o'clock in the morning for me right now, here in the state of Washington. Key updates, though. Jordan's meeting with opposition yields little progress. Keep in mind that he had, I believe, approximately 20 Republicans who refused to vote for him in the second vote for Speaker. So he lost some support, actually. Could he gain some back and then some? It's possible, but it's just not going all that well for him. The Republicans cannot get their act together. I don't know what in the world they're thinking. I don't want to really get into it right now because I want to save it for tomorrow. I just have so many things pulled up that I've been meaning to talk about. I got to talk about as much as I can before I'm walking out of here. But yes, several Republicans who voted against Representative Jim Jordan are meeting with the failed Speaker candidate. Interesting that they would call him the failed Speaker candidate. Seems like a little bit of a low blow there. Jordan emerges from meeting to say he is still running for Speaker. Yeah. Okay, some more stuff here. Matt Gaetz said he doesn't want a speaker light as an interim speaker. He also doesn't want Bud Light. Yeah, funny quote from him. He said he's against a speaker light. He's against a Bud Light, basically. And you can find those quotes, those clips, up on my Articulate Thinker News Clips channel. I uploaded some edits a little while ago. That's what I was spending my time on. I think I've been looking into the wrong camera this whole time since I switched to the screen view. But it's okay. All right, random other article from the Washington Post. It just has some of the initial information about who supported ousting Kevin McCarthy in the first place before this new race for speakership even began. Yeah, so 216 supported the ousting of Kevin McCarthy as speaker. 210 were opposed to it, so obviously the ousting went out courtesy of 208 make that 208 Democrats and 8 Republicans. Yes, that's right. 8 Republicans decided that they didn't want Kevin McCarthy around. 208 Democrats decided to go along with it, so essentially the Democrats made it happen. But now the Republicans can't come together in support of Jim Jordan, even as much as they were in support of Kevin McCarthy. And so this is why we are in limbo land right now. You can see all the names, but that's neither here nor there. We'll see if Jim Jordan, between now and this third vote, can win over a few supporters. I mean, he's going to need more than that. So earlier in the day, President Biden addressed the nation from the Oval Office, as you can see here on the screen. I'm not going to play any of the video. It's 15 minutes long. Somewhat strong statements coming from him, considering the state which he is usually in. And I don't mean geographically. I mean physically and mentally. But some political analysts, such as Britt Hume, who were saying that it could be potentially one of the strongest speeches Joe Biden has ever had during his presidency, received a lot of criticism from people. And I think part of that has to do with the fact that now, as foreign policies are often lumped together, well, they're being lumped together once again, and the support of Ukraine and the support of Israel are getting talked about all in the same sentence, along with all of the funding required. So we're supporting both of those nations, and some people are unhappy about that, because how can you really support one country at war but not the other? Is there a difference there? Yeah, of course there are many differences, and one is much more recent in terms of the development of war. But a lot of people who are opposed to funding, to our own detriment even, other countries in their wars, other nations in their wars, well, they're a bit sore about it altogether. And it's like a double dose, double trouble for them. And so they are not fond of his speech at all. But of course he did say some things. I don't want to say that you wouldn't expect from him, but as supportive as he has been of Israel, he did go out of his way to say that all of the Palestinians do not necessarily represent Hamas, and Hamas doesn't necessarily represent all of the Palestinians. Take that for what it's worth. I do recognize that the Palestinians well, they elected Hamas in the first place not too many years ago, and then elections went right out the window, and Hamas now just rules the land, or at least that portion of the land over there in Gaza specifically, which is where the war is going on right now. So there's a bit of a debate about whether or not all of the Palestinians are not to be trusted, not to be taken into this country in our humanitarian support of them. And I get it. You never know who might be slipping through the cracks. We have enough cracks down on the border. And speaking of the border, I could show you this here. This clip from the Columbia Bugle. It says, America's border today, while both sides in the swamp won't STFU, if you know what that means, about the need to ship billions of dollars overseas. So, goes right along with what I was saying. Let me play this clip, though. No audio, just the video. Long line of illegal immigrants coming around the bend. Nothing new.
¿De dónde es? Guatemala, Honduras. Venezuela. Venezuela. I'm from Venezuela.
Okay, they all seem to be from Venezuela. That's what they are saying, anyways. But overall, they are from a lot of places. Oh, look, Rashida Tlaib is trending. Oh, you can't see her name. There it is. Might talk about her a little bit. Someone else who has been talking about her, well, not directly, but yes, in reference, is John Fetterman. Interestingly enough, I can find myself agreeing with him. So yeah, to stray away from this debate over whether or not we should be funding yet another country at war, another nation at war, whatever you want to call Israel, and I know everyone seems to have a different opinion on it. Well, I said this. First time I've ever gone out of my way to agree with John Fetterman, who said in a tweet earlier in the day, in disagreement with the members of the squad, it's truly disturbing that members of Congress rushed to blame Israel for the hospital tragedy in Gaza. Who would take the word of a group that just massacred innocent Israeli civilians over our key ally? Well, some people would, apparently. Not me. I mean, I took a step back and waited for the facts to come out before I started shouting my opinion. Speculative opinion, but now it is pretty clear, it is pretty conclusive. As skeptical as one might tend to be about what our government says or Israel's government says, from everything I've seen, it is clear that the hospital, the Baptist hospital, historically Baptist hospital over in Gaza, was indeed struck unintentionally by Hamas, a misfired rocket. That doesn't mean there are no additional casualties of war. As for the casualties of war in that particular unintentional strike, so not really a strike, mixed reporting on that. Hard to get the numbers, the initial numbers that we got from, well, the Ministry of Health over there in Gaza, and therefore from Hamas, significantly exaggerated numbers. They said from 500 to 1,000, basically. Turns out it was a lot less than that. Some reports have suggested it could have been as few as 10 to 30. Also, there are reports of 100 to 300. So I don't know, somewhere in that range, I'm guessing. Regardless of the numbers, it is sad. It is, yeah, it is sad. But a lot of propaganda was making its way around, and members of our own government, which is reason to not trust our government, were siding with Hamas. Literally siding with Hamas. How do we know that they were siding with Hamas? Well, let's take Rashida Tlaib into consideration. Okay. So, when the initial terrorist attack happened at the hands of Hamas terrorists on October 7, she had nothing to say about it. What she did finally say was that she just wanted peace on both sides. Okay. That was a both sides moment for her. From her. And then she proceeded to talk about how Palestinians were the victims and Israelis were the villains. Basically. That's what it was for her. Okay. So, when she gets all of the information about a terrorist attack that happens in which more than 1,000 Israelis are killed, but she has all of the facts right there in front of her, she refuses to condemn it. And she pretends that we're missing something. That she's missing something. Well, she doesn't believe she's missing anything. She is missing plenty of screws. But when the facts are right there in front of her, and they do not fit her narrative, she doesn't call anything out. When she gets so much as an anecdotal possibility that something might fit her narrative, then she goes out, outraged, and begins to condemn. No both siding, just one-dimensional, one-directional condemnation of Israel, of course, even without the facts. And then even after the facts come out and prove that she's wrong, she still is condemning Israel, courtesy of information which she has received directly from Hamas terrorists. So clearly she is anti-Semitic, and it's not an exaggeration to say that she is. No, she clearly is, because she believes every word they have to say. She eats it up. On the other hand, things that Israeli military has to say turn out to be true. She still doesn't even believe that. She doesn't care about it. But props to John Fetterman here. At least he can type a tweet. I'll give him that much. And his communicating skills have gotten a bit better, though he is still a very cringeworthy member of Congress who recently, in an interview with Stephen Colbert, mocked the type of people who are let into Congress, despite being someone who didn't really belong in Congress. Yeah, that was ironic. You can find that video, that clip, up on my Articulate Thinker News Clips channel as well. But he added down here, "I will always stand with Israel and look forward to supporting any military, intelligence, or humanitarian aid to get the job done." So, someone says, "This is the smartest thing you've ever said." Maybe. It's possible. He hasn't said a lot of smart things lately. Until now. So I said, John Fetterman is now a better man. And there he is. John Fetterman rips fellow Dems for blaming Israel for a hospital strike. Of course, he's referring to the members of the squad. Even if not naming names, he is kicking butts. Kicking butts, but not taking names. Truly disturbing. John Fetterman claps back at far-left lawmakers who blamed Israel for hospital strike. Yeah, facepalm there. And an unrelated photo. Democratic Senator John Fetterman of Pennsylvania criticized fellow Democrats for their quick decision to blame the Israeli Defense Forces for a missile attack on a hospital in Gaza after the United States assessed that a misfired Islamic Palestinian Jihad rocket was the likely cause. All right, before I finish reading that, before I lose my train of thought, and if it looks like I'm about to fall asleep, that's because my eyes are very tired. I'm very tired. I'm just taking a little bit of a break here. Okay, so I did hear about some church in Gaza being struck by a missile or something like that. I think it was a strike on a nearby building, which had been utilized by terrorists, and it was struck, so the story goes, by Israeli military. And a certain extent, I'm not sure to what extent, of the church nearby, the target, was damaged, if not destroyed. I'm not sure what the facts of that matter is, which is why I'm prefacing this so much. So all the people who were taking Hamas's word in the blast at the hospital, well, it's obvious that they're going to once again, and have been once again, taking Hamas's side on this, taking Hamas's information on this, as unreliable as it is. And so when I was on Twitter earlier scrolling through what was trending about this church, the same people who were putting out disinformation a day ago are now once again putting out what is potentially disinformation. But I don't know that. I don't know how much of this church was actually destroyed, if any of it. I'm seeing conflicting reports and stuff. I don't know how many injuries, what the death toll might be. So I'm going to wait. I'm just not putting it past Israel. After all, they're missile striking an awful lot of infrastructure there in Gaza. An awful lot. It's a hostile wasteland at this point. But yes, they give warnings to evacuate. People don't evacuate. They strike something. People die. And then on the Israel side, they say, hey, we gave notice to evacuate. On the other side, they say, hey, we don't even get those notices. We don't have electricity. We don't have this. We don't have that. Any number of arguments that could be made in any strike, whether intentional or unintentional. But at the end of the day, I don't even know how accurate the death toll from Gaza actually is. Like, I'm hearing, 2,000 deaths? As opposed to the around 1,500 or so Israeli deaths from mostly from the initial terrorist attack. Though there would be many more deaths in Israel if it weren't for the Iron Dome blocking Hamas's pathetic little rockets. Well, some of them aren't so pathetic. It's just that compared to Iron Dome, they are. I don't know how anyone knows the accuracy of the reports of the death toll in Gaza are. Because aren't those numbers also coming from Hamas? Let me know in the comments below if you know something about that I don't know. I keep hearing death toll numbers every day, every hour of every day. Now, how many people in Israel, how many people in Palestine, in Gaza have died? And, there's only verification on the one side of that. Because on the other side of that, you have Hamas. Yeah. Anyways, as I was willing to do in the case of the hospital, if it turns out that Israel has been responsible for the strike of a hospital or a church or anything like that, ruthlessly killing civilians, well, I will condemn it wholeheartedly. It's just that all the propaganda, or most of it, has gone in one direction thus far. And that's just the fact of the matter. I'm telling you, and it's the same people that continue to put out the propaganda each time it makes itself available, courtesy of Hamas. Back to this article from Daily Caller. Not trying to get caught up in the weeds too much here. It's just so many things on my mind. So many things to follow up on from earlier as well. Check out my previous show if you haven't already done so. On Tuesday, an explosion occurred at the Al-Ahli Baptist Hospital in Gaza, which reportedly killed between 400 and 500 civilians, according to multiple reports. But I don't think those are actually accurate. After several left-wing Democratic members of Congress quickly blamed Israeli Defense Forces for the attack, claiming they were reckless in responding to Hamas terrorist attack on Israel on October 7, Fetterman responded by calling their rhetoric truly disturbing. And if they leave it at the 400, 500 civilians mark there, not much due diligence has been done in regards to this article, because a lot of new news has come out since then, which would suggest that that particular death toll is way lower than that. Due partly to the fact that the misfired rocket struck in the parking lot, not on the hospital itself. And also that it did not leave a crater and therefore was not nearly as big as what was initially thought. Blew up some cars and stuff. And yes, took some lives, unfortunately. But it's just that the numbers were initially exaggerated. And so many reports are still they're reporting off of that. It's truly disturbing that members of Congress rushed to blame Israel for the tragedy at the hospital in Gaza. Fetterman wrote on X, formerly known as Twitter, who would take the word of a group that just massacred innocent Israeli civilians over our key ally? I'm telling you, just as so many establishment contrarians have opposed the funding of Ukraine, I imagine more and more will oppose the funding of Israel as time goes by. Should I read the rest of this? Democratic Representative Rashida Tlaib of Michigan, a Palestinian American who has been strongly criticized for her response to Hamas attacks, was one lawmaker who blamed Israel for the strike. Shortly after the attack, Tlaib tweeted, "Israel just bombed the Baptist hospital, killing 500 Palestinians, doctors, children, patients, just like that," and directly criticized President Joe Biden for supporting Israel. I don't even know that we know the identification of any of the casualties and fatalities from that hospital, much less the more recently affected church. POTUS, this is what happens when you refuse to facilitate a ceasefire and help de-escalate, Tlaib wrote in the same tweet, adding that your war and destruction only approach has opened my eyes and many Palestinian Americans and Muslim Americans like me. We will remember where you stood. So those are strong words from Rashida Tlaib against Joe Biden, whose party she is a part of. The United States has declined to call for a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, with Secretary of State Antony Blinken deleting a tweet that made such a call. Although it did seem like Joe Biden was a little bit more peace-oriented in his speech today, calling out the Islamophobia just as much as the anti-Semitism. So he was evening things out a bit more than he has. I don't know if it's a change of tone, but it is true that many, many, many people on both sides are dying, even though we can't get the numbers right, I guess. Tlaib also attracted notoriety for delivering a speech on the National Mall on Wednesday to a rally organized by Jewish Voices for Peace, which later stormed the Cannon House office building at the U.S. Capitol complex on Wednesday in support of Gaza, leading to over 300 being arrested. That's right. So yeah, another insurrection-y type event, right? I continue to watch people who think it's okay to bomb a hospital where children. It's so hard to watch those videos, Tlaib said before crying on stage. It seemed very performative, if you ask me. Adding that President Biden, not all Americans are with you on this one. You need to wake up and understand that. Okay, your point would be a little bit more fair and square if you weren't lying. This was after the truth came out about the hospital being hit by Hamas. from rockets which they shot off nearby. Divisions in the House Democratic caucus have been apparent over the dispute regarding Hamas, with some Democrats, such as Representative Josh Gottheimer of New Jersey, and Dan Goldman of New York, taking an avowedly pro-Israel position. Fetterman has vowed to support Israel, writing, "I will always stand with Israel and look forward to supporting any military intelligence or humanitarian aid to get the job done." Tlaib did not immediately respond to a request for comment, despite how much she loves to talk. Now, I have some stuff pulled up about that. Here's an article from the New York Times from earlier in the day. What we know about the explosion at the hospital in Gaza. I can skip this, I think. And if I've said anything inaccurately myself, I would be happy to have the facts in front of me. So, yes, let me know in the comments below what you think, what you know. It's a learning experience for me. I'm no expert on any of this. I don't have the intel. And this is a question that has been on my mind. I don't know if I would say from day one. But shortly after the response by Israel began, how many casualties, fatalities of war equate to a terrorist attack? Like, at what point is the response no longer justified? And that question could apply to so many different foreign policy issues, whether it was the Obama administration. That came to mind earlier. Hundreds of innocent civilians were killed in drone strikes, which he carried out. The Obama administration, which hey, was Joe Biden too. So, is it justified or is it not? If you're taking out terrorists, can you kill any number of innocent civilians and shrug it off? Now, I'm not necessarily saying that about Israel, because they have given all sorts of warnings. Now they're even delivering humanitarian aid to Gaza, or at least they're attempting to, which I don't know if that's a good idea, because Hamas will very likely get their hands on it and use it. But, of course, Israel has been telling Gazans to evacuate because of this. This is the state of things there. And actually, this was a few days ago, on the 12th. At least the 12th. So, on the one hand, you're telling them to evacuate, and on the other hand, you're telling them you're going to send in humanitarian aid. It's only going to be 20 trucks worth. I did see a report that those trucks were going to be held up, as in there was some disagreement, I think in Egypt, because that's where they were going to be coming over the border at. And they might actually, again, get held up, as in not making it, not like a hold up, a stick up. That's not what I mean. It sounds like I'm talking about someone hijacking or carjacking all the goods. But no, I'm just saying, I did see a report. I just don't know if it's propaganda or not, because every other thing I see out there turns out to be propaganda. So I don't want to report anything too definitively. Hopefully, if those 20 trucks do make it across the border there tomorrow, well, the Gazans end up with the goods rather than Hamas. But they are, in a sense, one and the same sometimes, because, and this goes back to the point I was sort of kind of trying to make about what percentage of Palestinians represent Hamas, and whether or not Hamas represents all of Palestinians. If here in America, we voted in a communist government, and the government turned our country into a communist country, I mean, the country would be known as just that. Our country would be known as a communist country. And while not everyone in the country would agree with the communist policies of the communist government in this communist country, but the country would be considered a communist country as a whole. So, yeah, there's that. So over in Palestinian territory, when they've elected Hamas, and Hamas took over the government, did away with elections, they became a form of communist government, right? More of a militia government. So it's hard to separate. It's hard to separate the innocent civilians from the terrorists. It just is. And that's why you have presidential candidates like Ron DeSantis saying, we cannot accept them in to our country. Let the countries around them take them in. Those who are very, very, very sympathetic to Palestinians until it comes time to take them in as refugees. I just don't know that that's the best move for us right now, especially with what is going on at the border, the southern border. So I think that Ron DeSantis, not to go off on an election tangent, I think that he has been pretty strong on this. Nikki Haley has been a little bit wishy-washy. Everyone else has been a little bit wishy-washy. Donald Trump has been focused on his personal feelings toward Benjamin Netanyahu, because Benjamin Netanyahu congratulated Joe Biden when Joe Biden won the previous election. So, yeah, Donald Trump is always distracted, though. Here's this. Hamas shares footage of the terror group dismantling water pipelines supplied by foreign humanitarian aid. I'll go ahead and play this clip because I keep referencing it in my shows. I don't know if that's going to have a copyright issue to it, that song, so I'll mute that. The point is, people complain, understandably so, about Israel shutting off water and electricity to Gaza. But a lot of reason why they don't have their own resources is because Hamas has taken them and used them for themselves in order to create weaponry to then use against Israel, which they did, ultimately kicking a great big hornet's nest, and therefore Hamas is responsible for the killing, even if unintentional, of their own civilians, of their own citizens, the people whom they claim to be liberating, or some nonsense like that. It's just not playing out that way. You just, yeah, kicked around and found out, didn't you? You know what? I don't know how graphic this is. This is damage at the hospital, where the actual infrastructure remained intact for the most part, because the misfired rocket struck in the parking lot outside, leaving the building standing, despite what people had claimed about the entire hospital having been destroyed. But yes, you can see here a lot of damage done, and clearly some of the initial fire and smoke came from cars. And that sort of an explosion can do damage to the buildings nearby and the lives of the people. So sad stuff, regardless of how much was destroyed in terms of the infrastructure, but it's something that couldn't be initially comprehended, since the explosion happened during the night. You couldn't see the crater. You couldn't see what exactly was even hit. Kyle Becker has a thread of this up. I have all kinds of stuff pulled up here about news publications which kept on changing headlines because their initial reports, based upon information which came from Hamas, were saying, for example, Israel strike kills hundreds in hospital, Palestinians say. And then they changed it to at least 500 dead in strike on Gaza hospital, Palestinians say. So they took Israel out but still called it a strike. And then they changed it again. They say at least 500 dead in blast at Gaza hospital, Palestinians say. So it's good, I guess, that they're updating their headlines, but the fact that they can't get it right before they start reporting on it, they being the New York Times in this case, well-respected publication, right? Well, that is concerning. And also, there's this nonsense from members of Congress. Talked about Rashida Tlaib. Well, here's something from Ilhan Omar, who said, bombing a hospital is among the gravest of war crimes. So, that's my point. When Hamas terrorists go across the border and slaughter men, women, and children in their own homes and cars in Israel, she does not keep the same energy. She doesn't say anything about war crimes. But if she gets a report from Hamas, from the terrorists, that a certain number of people died in a alleged strike by Israel, which wouldn't have even made any sense, she's immediately proclaiming that it's a war crime. She says, IDF reportedly blowing up one of the few places the injured and wounded can seek medical treatment and shelter during a war is horrific. POTUS needs to push for an immediate ceasefire to end this slaughter. Completely one-dimensional, these members of the squad. So she retweeted this Associated Press article here, and even that basically got fact-checked by readers who had context, courtesy of Community Notes. Great service on Twitter. It reads, the U.S. has collected high-confidence intelligence showing that the explosion at the hospital compound in Gaza was caused by the militant group Palestinian Islamic Jihad, not an Israeli strike. And also down below, President Joe Biden has confirmed that the explosion was most likely the result of a misfiring of a Hamas missile. Video also shows that the explosion was in a car park and does not appear to have demolished any buildings. Right. But no correction on her part. She will act like she was never wrong about anything. Rashida Tlaib will act like she was never wrong about anything. And they will go on looking for that next anecdotal source of manufactured outrage. And I'm not saying that all is fair in love and war or anything like that. I'm not saying that Israel has clean hands in all of this. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just calling it like I see it as I see it. And so many people, when faced with facts, they'll dig back in their archives of reasons why they hate Israel. And they'll say, but Israel did this 20 years ago. But Israel did that 20 years. And it's just endless animosity. And yes, hatred. But yes, this from Rashida Tlaib. Israel just bombed the hospital, the Baptist hospital, killing 500 Palestinians, doctors, children, patients, just like that. I already read that tweet. It was in that article about John Fetterman. I'm running out of time here. But of course, she was very disinformative about all that. And look at this, more community notes on this post. So, Rashida Tlaib was retweeting this guy, and his initial tweet got context added to it. Using geolocation from the live stream of the explosion at the hospital, it appears a misfired rocket was launched from inside Gaza. Yeah, I've seen it. Hamas originally claimed that this was an Israeli airstrike, but no evidence has been produced to back this claim up. No evidence. Yet these buffoons continue to claim it. Israel have denied it was their strike and have produced video evidence to support this. Open source intelligence have analyzed the evidence in this thread. So all of the actual experts will tell you exactly what I'm telling you. Don't take it from me. Just use your brain. How about that? That works. But yeah, so many different publications. The aforementioned New York Times, so many more reporting inaccurately, and they proceed to talk about how we need to watch out for misinformation and disinformation, as though they have never been responsible for publishing any of it. Another thread here, exposing the fake and fraudulent nature of mainstream media. So clearly I'm not someone simping for mainstream media or anything like that. It's interesting because there was so much outrage against the Hamas terrorists on October 7th, so on and so forth. But then this happened, and a lot of them seemed to flip a switch. It's like they were looking for a change of narrative almost. It's like they were tired of being supportive of Israel and were just looking for a reason to switch sides and begin condemning Israel, since Israel is seen as the overdog rather than the underdog. It's like everyone is simping for someone out there, even if it's Hamas. Elon Levy said, last night an Islamic Jihad rocket fired from a cemetery behind a hospital in Gaza misfired and hit the Al-Ahli hospital, killing innocent Palestinian civilians. Want the evidence? Buckle up for a thread. Run it by an OSINT expert if you don't believe me. Intelligence people have done a great job with all of this. But I don't have time for any of this. I don't mean to kick a dead horse here, but I just had so much stuff pulled up and wanted to cover as much of it as possible. Front pages of the Washington Post, New York Times, and Wall Street Journal all uncritically spread Hamas propaganda that hundreds died in a hospital explosion. Our media is fundamentally broken, says Clay Travis. Proof is in the pudding here. Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, headlines there. Here's a bird's eye view of the scene of the crime against humanity. Well, I don't know if you'd call it that. It was Hamas unintentionally bombing their own people. But I wouldn't put it past them to do it intentionally, since they use them as human shields. Interesting how the outrage is wearing off now that it turns out that Hamas was responsible. Well, the outrage, other than the outrage which has still been directed at Israel for some reason or another. You had this protesting going on at the Capitol. There is a well-organized insurrection taking place at the U.S. Capitol. I'm not going to get behind that word insurrection too much. I imagine the person who said that here is saying it somewhat sarcastically, since they probably don't even like calling January 6th an insurrection. So I'm not then going to turn around and call this an insurrection. But this is what was happening. Hundreds have breached the building, with thousands more going crazy outside. Ceasefire. And this is supposedly a Jewish group in here, protesting on behalf of Palestinians. And hey, stranger things have happened. Reminds me of the LGBTQ community out protesting on behalf of Palestinians, even though their lifestyle wouldn't exactly be supported over there in Palestinian territory. Another clip from inside. And of course, Rashida Tlaib was trying to have her cake and eat it too. Why hasn't Rashida Tlaib been censored by the House? Oh yeah, we need a speaker. Going back to this business of whether or not we have or will have a speaker. But Steak for Breakfast said that, oh yeah, we need a speaker in order to censure. I don't even know that I'm supportive of censoring people, not too much. I like to hear how stupid they can be, so I can know who to mock.
And to my president, to our president, yes, he's still on. Well, hold on. I want him to know, as a Palestinian American, is also somebody of Muslim faith, I'm not going to forget this. And I think a lot of people are not going to forget this. And it's not a threat. It isn't. They think we're joking. I mean, I think the White House and everyone thinks that we're just going to sit back and let this just continue to happen. No.
Oh, okay, so it is a threat. It is a threat or it isn't a threat. Which is it? You sound like a moron, by the way. Like I said, I'll mock you.
No. The fact of the matter is, our lives are not safe with you or the forever peach president. When are we going to feel safe? When are we going to stop funding continued, literally, oppression of indigenous communities? When are we going to say enough?
I mean, you wouldn't feel this safe in Palestine. And I don't mean because of anything Israel is doing. I just mean generally speaking. Because of what Hamas has been doing. So you're talking about how unsafe you feel. And I get that there are people taking out their animosity, their hatred on people of different religions. Including in the case of a 6-year-old boy who is ruthlessly stabbed over 20 times and murdered by his landlord. Yeah, those things happen. But you're up on your pulpit there. You're a member of Congress. Wailing and gnashing your teeth, basically. Like, you're not as scared as you're making yourself out to be. Just seem to be manufacturing a lot of outrage. And if the narrative is, as this lady's sign says here in the front, end the genocide, you should at least keep that same energy when there is a genocide brought to the doorstep of the Israelis initially. But hey, you're simping for your own ideology, I guess.
It makes me so angry to have to say it, but I'm telling you, I'm talking to people that literally are like me. They literally believed in this party that was supposed to be inclusive of all of our opinions and our views and our political stance and all of these things. But what is starting to get really, really, really clear and very loud is that somehow many of us in this room, because of our political opinions, because maybe our faith is a certain faith, maybe because our ethnicity is a certain ethnicity, that somehow we're subhuman.
No, you're just a moron. So there's that. Another clip of her here claiming that Israel blew up the hospital. And this was a day after that was disputed. So she got community noted as well. Readers added context they thought people might want to know. I'm not even going to play this clip. It's actually up on my Articulate Thinker News Clips channel. I need to wrap this up, but she breaks down, stating Israel bombed a hospital, killing 500. This report is now in question, said Woodlandman. Yeah. She was either lying or she is a moron, like I said. And cannot tell the difference between fact or fiction. Because it's all about narrative. And whatever fits your narrative is what you're going to push. But hey, don't have to look any further than mainstream media. I hope that's not what you feel you're getting from me. If you're here, well, thank you for being here. Feel free to disagree with me on anything I've said. Let me know in the comments below what you think, what you know. I gotta go, though. Keep in touch, keep in tune. New content is coming soon. Peace.